This is the perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah! Another myth bites the dust.
Hello, TPR Nation. This is Amber Kuhn from the Perfect RIA. Thank you for joining me on today's Follow-Up Friday, where I'll be covering the highlights and action items from this week's episodes. On Monday, Matt and Micah were joined by Orion Matthews, the Perfect RIA's Chief Technology Officer and partner. They were discussing delegation, when it works and when it doesn't, and what happens if you delegate something to someone, but then it doesn't get done or it doesn't get done correctly. Matt started off by talking about a Chick-fil-A franchise, which is primarily run by lower paid employees, but they're still able to run a highly complex and very regulated business. Micah said that when you look at something like that, when something is so well run and efficient, it doesn't look that complicated until you start peeling back the layers. What you end up seeing is really effective delegation because it involves numerous steps, the majority of which need to be done correctly. Matt has shared many times that we already delegate 99% of the things in our lives. So delegation isn't something that's new. Orion shared an example of when delegating didn't work for him. And in this instance, it was regarding travel, which at first thought it's an easy process. But then he said that there are these little things that can get in the way, such as not getting the seat that you want. He said if you delegated poorly, do you just deal with it? Or do you get involved? He said you need to look to see if you delegated correctly or not. This is why you need to have a checklist. So when he delegated his travel, he didn't have a checklist. Micah added that it's not that complex of a task, but you need to look to see, did that person follow the process? And did you fail to create the process correctly? He said, pull up the process and go through it. And either someone missed it or you just didn't have it in the process. So for that travel example, all the preferences needed to be in that documentation. Orion then shared that people love to be given a task and some freedom. That's really what delegation is all about. But he said if you don't hand it off well, then it can create a negative experience for everyone who's involved. Matt and Micah shared an example within the Perfect RAA, which was our follow-up Friday episodes. Matt had been doing these episodes for a while, and then he decided to delegate this to me. He did say that the joke was that he just told me, which is true, but as he mentioned, I also had prior episodes to reference how to do this. And as Micah mentioned, I did multiple practice recordings and shared a few with him that I felt were the best out of all of those samples. We met so I could get his feedback because it was important for me to hear where I could improve. Micah said that part of the delegation process should be for whomever you're delegating to come back to you and ask what they may have missed for the next couple of tasks. Orion also said you need to look at the person that you're delegating to. Some people just want to operate processes and don't necessarily want that autonomy. Matt said a common mistake is that you tell someone to make a decision and then you get upset if you don't like that decision or if it's wrong. You need to think about what decisions can someone else make and then what's your level of confidence. One of the mistakes that Micah said he sees a lot is an advisor deciding to delegate a task, but then if the job isn't done correctly or up to par, then they're taking it back. He said you need to look to see whether two other people can successfully do a task. If the answer is yes, then it can be delegated out. Orion brought up whether there is some apprehension to not delegating out because someone may not want to share all of their finances or personal information. For Micah, he said he was apprehensive about this at first, but now his assistants have access to pretty much everything. The more his team has access, the better delegation becomes. He said if you hire the right people, the better delegation works. The guys discussed company credit cards and employment contracts too. As a business owner, if you don't have an employment contract, you need to find someone to help with that. This is not something you want to wing. You want to have a good ironclad employment agreement. The guys wrapped up the episode by stating that you want to take advice from people who are delegating. You also need to set expectations and be clear about that with your team. And as a reminder, if it's not documented, then it didn't happen. You need to make sure that your documentation is thorough enough that someone from the outside can pick it up and read it and know what you were talking about. Let's get into action items from Monday's episode. For Backstage Pass and Invictus members, watch Colleen and Victoria's webinars where they shared their perspective on delegation. Our most recent session was from this September. Also, pick one thing and start delegating it. But once you delegate it, you cannot pick it back up. An easy one for this is travel because this is measurable. Lastly, get an employment agreement and make sure that you're reviewing it. And do not write your own or copy someone else's. On this week's What Works Wednesday, Matt was joined by Justin Fitzpatrick, who is the co-owner of Income Labs, where he runs the research and development. Matt shared that Income Labs is one of the few, if not only, softwares that can calculate dynamic distribution rates, also what Matt calls guardrails. Justin said that this work is not the kind of thing you can do on a notepad or calculator. Matt was talking about that one of the big constraints with financial planning software was that everything was etched into stone. But then a client would ask what would happen if they took out more money or if the market went down, and then there wouldn't be any action steps. Justin believes that adjustments can pretty much save any plan. He said sometimes life happens differently from how you expect, and you need to be able to take all of this into account. You have to be able to show the pluses and minuses of a decision that a client can make. Justin also stated that humans tend to be risk averse. Often clients want you to establish a plan where the upside is closer than the downside. So you also need to be nudged when it's time to tell a client that they can spend more. At Income Labs, Justin said you can create a plan, you set it to be tracked, and then once a month, everything is updated. Then, if there's any changes called for in the plan, it will let the advisor know when there's a need for an adjustment. He said, let the software do the work for you. Justin said they really want to bring better outcomes and better experiences to clients along the way, and also help clients and advisors have better relationships. He also said you want to try really hard to communicate with the client in ways that they can understand. When you say that your portfolio went up another 5% and you can spend an extra $1,000 a month, your client can understand what that means. Matt said that if you use any type of industry jargon, you should just replace that with the word marshmallow. Because most clients, unless they're in finance, just won't understand. Justin added that you expect people to gain a new vocabulary when they move into retirement, but most people just want to keep living their life. So ideally, you just keep talking to them in the same way. Justin shared his thoughts that retirees have a superpower, which is that they can change their planning for spending. There are little changes that people can make that have a big long-term effect. He said your spending in retirement is a series of small liabilities that come due. They're not all due at once. You don't fill up a car with all the gas you're going to need for the rest of your life. Let's recap this Wednesday's action items. Check out Income Labs and demo the software so you're aware of the options that are out there. Join Income Labs at their webinars, which they hold once or twice a month, and you can sign up for their emails to get those notifications. And Justin said you don't need to be a subscriber to attend. Connect with Income Labs on LinkedIn and look for their work on Kitsis. And lastly, look at anything that you're presenting to clients and rate that on a scale of 0 to 10, comparing how much of what you're presenting is in the academic world and how much is in a way that a client can understand. On this week's Worlds to Conquer, Jamie continued with her series on client onboarding. She said that clients are so excited when they first start out, but she said they don't lead with talking about investments. In those initial conversations, they're talking about all areas of a client's finances, not just their investments. Jamie said you need to see if you're guilty of getting commission breath by talking about investments too early in the conversation, and that if you start with investments first, you're putting your interest ahead of your clients. When does that stop? She also said to think about how many times have you jumped the gun on transferring assets? Because how do you know that this is going to be a long lasting relationship? Jamie mentioned having a conversation about consolidation with clients. She said during that process, it's usually confusing for the client because they're used to having different statements on different letterhead for different accounts. The way they handle this is by providing a flow chart with each of their clients' accounts and where everything is flowing to. She said they'll also go through the client's employee benefits and see what is being offered. She said oftentimes what a client says ends up being different from what is actually the case. Jamie also mentioned the dishwasher rule. And if you haven't heard this from Micah, his saying is that if he does the dishes and his wife doesn't see him do the dishes, did the dishes actually get done? There's a lot of work that you as the advisor do, so it's important to let the client know and get credit for the work that you're doing, even if the work doesn't result in a direct action. Jamie said you want to remember to constantly set expectations with clients, both in the beginning and throughout the relationship. You want to do what you said you're going to do. Your job is to deliver massive value on a regular basis. Jamie then went into talking about referrals. She said that you have the opportunity to make a client a raving fan during that first year. During those first 12 months, you have that opportunity to have the most amount of referrals that the client is ever going to give you because you're going to radically change the client's lives in that initial year. She said you want to capitalize on the client's energy and referrals and make the clients excited about talking to others. So, what does your referral campaign look like? Are you creating opportunities for a client to talk about you? Jamie recommends patronizing local stores. In Shalansky and Associates, they send a baked goods basket and deliver it to the new client's place of work. And they send a basket to the client who sent the referral. And anytime someone says thank you, Jamie will say, I'm passionate about financial planning and love working with people just like you. She will always ask for referrals. Jamie shared a ton of amazing tips and quite a few things to think about in how you're onboarding your clients over those first 12 months. So let's go over Jamie's last action items in this week's episode. Jump online in the forum for our members or join us on social media and tell us what your referral process is. How are you growing your practice? What are you doing to make yourself one of a kind instead of one of many? Thank you for joining me on today's Follow Up Friday. Please be sure to give us 5 stars wherever you're enjoying this podcast and share this or any of our episodes with another advisor who you think might benefit from listening. And until next time, happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect